Welcome back, everybody. Happy Saturday. Well, yesterday I was up doing a little more sandblasting. Got a couple more of these segment gears sandblasted up. I got all that hardware from last week sandblasted up. This is all for the sulky and the hitch and whatnot. That's all ready to go. I got the new hardware in this week for the linkages here. I already got the modern markings ground off there. I can give them a little spritz with the sandblaster and those will be ready to go. Replacing all these crusty original ones. I got in the correct hardware to put the hubcaps on, so that project's ready to go. I got in some new pin stock, round stock. So I made up some new pins for the steering shaft here. This one is a nice snug fit, and this one's a little bit oversized to take up. So there's no side-to-side play in that slot anymore. There's still, of course, front to back play, just the way that joint is designed. But as far as sloppiness in the pin, there's zero there now. So that's about as tight as joint that can be. So that's basically ready to go. Still got to figure out what to do on the steering wheel end. Haven't figured out what I want to do with that yet with the steering wheel, but one thing at a time. I also got in some hardware for the hose clamps, some new machine bolts for them. I'll have to cut them to the proper length yet and actually grind down a little bit, make the heads just a little bit smaller, because most of them they work. There's a couple here where the heads interfere. They got to be just a little bit smaller. I suppose just the inconsistencies in manufacturing. But even all the original screws, they're not even uniform. I suppose the different suppliers and stuff were all just a little bit different, or if they've been replaced over the years, which is very likely. I also got in spark plug wire and related stuff. So I got all the spark plug stuff from the Brillman company. You can look them up online, brillman.com. That's where I ordered everything from. Real nice source for this kind of thing. And it's nice to go right back to the source. They're the ones that actually make the spark plug wire. They produce the wire. So all these other companies, from what I can gather, that you can buy like the wire from, they're actually getting it from Brillman, from what I understand. So you might as well go right to the source. You get a little bit cheaper price that way too. So I got hopefully enough wire. I got the little thumb nuts, so you can take off the factory end of the spark plug and thread on the little thumb nut, so you can clamp down the ring terminal, which I also got. So that'll go on the one end of the spark plug wire, get crimped on there. And then on the mag end, since these won't fit into, so this isn't the actual my mag, this is one Lawrence had around. These don't really work. Whoops, show what I'm doing. These don't really work the greatest in these housings. They do work, but just barely. And it might just be because this one's actually cracked. Anyway, the point of the story is that's what these fittings are designed for. And that's actually what this old magneto had, the remnants of it still on there. So it's a little crimp on type of an end. You wrap the wire around, you crimp this on, and that gives you the little, basically a different style of ring terminal to put onto that magneto. And then your screws on there to tight it. The thumb screw, whatever you want to call that, thumb knob, tightens it up onto the mag then. So I just got to figure out how to properly install them yet. I'm thinking some type of like a rivet punch set, like for like hollow rivets, should work pretty decent on there. I'll have to do some experimenting. That's why I ordered a dozen of each of these instead of just the 4 that I needed, so I can do a few experiments. So they call it a brass ring spark plug mag terminal. Those are called thumb nuts. There's several different, I think there's like 3 different size, shapes, and threads of these. With my particular one, I had to get the metric thread, because these are the thread on the end of the spark plug is metric. And then these are brass ring spark plug terminals, they call them. And there's all different versions and kinds of these too, but I believe this is what this tractor would have most likely had. I also ordered up a spark plug crimper, wire terminal crimper. This is from a different company. Hopefully it'll work. When they advertised it on the site, it didn't say anything about the size. Now that I actually got it, it says 8.5 millimeter spark plug terminals. So hopefully that will work. This is 7 millimeter spark plug wire. So hopefully the terminals themselves will work with this crimper. So this is hopefully kind of a nice one. It's got a ratchet system on it, so it only releases once you get tight enough. You know, if you're not to the squished enough point, it won't release until you get there. So it should go in like this, and then it basically takes those 2 ears and folds them back around into the spark plug wire. I haven't even tried it yet. So then of course this end is for stripping the wire, and that works. I at least did a little test there. So yeah, hopefully they work for what I need. They seem to be a pretty good quality tool, so we'll try them. What else? I've been working on clutch material, sourcing and whatever, because, well, Norm had given me these clutch discs when he rebuilt my engine to use in the clutch. These are just something he had around, and of course they're for a different application. But he said, oh, I could just take, and because the ID is right, just take and cut them down to the correct OD and use them. And it probably would be just fine. But what makes me a little bit leery is I'm going to have all these rivet holes in the material, making it that much weaker where it could potentially crack and break at those places. And I don't particularly like that. Like I said, it kind of makes me a little uneasy. Because the original ones, they're not actually riveted to anything. They're just floating in there, no holes in them. So I kind of prefer to find some material where we can do the same thing. And I think we got it figured out. A friend of mine is working on a cleat track back home with the same company clutch. It's a Borg & Beck clutch, just like this is, only it's a different size. I believe his is like a 10-inch, where this is an 8-inch, if I'm remembering correct. So I think it's a little bit bigger. So it's a little bit different, but the same basic principle. And he got some brake clutch material from McMaster-Carr, and he's actually had it cut out with the water jet where he works. So if we can for sure decide what thickness I need, I might pull in a favor from him and see if he can do the same for me, cut me out a couple new discs. But we got to confirm what thickness. So these appear like they were 1/8 inch. They're a little bit under because I suppose they were worn a little bit, but I'm pretty sure they started life as an 1/8 inch thick material, which is what he ended up using too. But the only way to really know for sure if that's the right size is to put the whole clutch together with 1/8 inch spacers in there and see if everything functions the way it should. And I can't do that until I get that center driven disc back from Norm, which he's getting a new one cast. So we're kind of in a holding pattern on that for the time being. I kind of prefer to get that back. Like I say, throw these ones back in, put the whole clutch together, make sure it functions the way it should. I'll probably actually throw it all back into the tractor, make sure it all works the way it should, and then if it is, then I'll probably have them cut me out a couple of new clutch discs with 1/8 inch material, because the next size bigger is 3/16, I believe, and that's probably too thick, we're guessing. So yeah, that's what we know about that at this point. Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to work on here next. I'll check back when I do figure it out. Oh, I also sandblasted up the mag bracket here too. So that's ready to go. I guess what I should do next year is come up with a final list of bolts we need to make for Dad, so he can start machining me some bolts. Okay, hose clamp bolts are all done. Cut down to the right length. Heads sanded down so they fit into the clamp better. I did the old chuck it into the drill and take it to the sander and sand them down trick, since I don't have a lathe here handy, so that was quick and easy. So that part of the project is done. Little test to make sure that the 4 spark plug wires would fit through the spark plug wire loom, tube, whatever you want to call this. Keeps it away from the hot exhaust manifold. And they do. Not a ton of extra room, but they easily fit through there. I think Matt's probably right. I think I probably have to run them all through before I crimp any of the ends on. Because I don't know if you probably wouldn't get them through with the ends on. They'd probably be too tight. So, at least they fit though. Okay, question out there. Anybody out there know how to properly do these type of rings? I've been experimenting here, trying to figure out how they really should be done. Of course, I'm probably not doing it the right way, but I've been looking online and I can't find any directions on how it really should be done. So all I did was start to open these up a little bit, either with needle nose pliers a little bit, or a blunt nose punch, just to kind of get them spread a little bit. Strip the end of the wire, of course, put it in there, and try to flatten them down. I mean, I guess it kind of worked, but it just seems like there should be a better way to do this. I had this little guy in my miscellaneous drawer of stuff. It's like a little rivet set, and I did squish it with that. That did seem to help. I'm not even 100% sure what this is really for. Good old Pratt Company, Greenfield, Massachusetts, USA. So some type of as you tighten this down, it tightens up that inner deal and kind of smooshes the rivet in place. And it just happens to be the right size for this terminal. So I mean, I ran it in there and squished it down. And I mean, it works and everything. And then you can put it on the mag here, and again, this isn't my actual mag, but it's the same Dixie. I mean, and that terminal clamps down and it seems to work and everything, so maybe I'm just overthinking this, but just like I said, it seems like there should be a better way to do this. Snug that up there. I mean, it ain't gonna go anywhere, I guess, as long as that spark plug wire is contacting that terminal it should be good, but I don't know. It just it seems a little bit rinky-dink, but that's how these old ones were too. They're just kind of crimped around. Is that just the way it is? Anybody else done these before? Come on. Come on. Now I got it stuck in there. There. So yeah, let me know if there's a better way to do this. Otherwise, this morning I did some more sandblasting. Got the big clutch spring sandblasted, the clutch plate here, the internal arm and plate, and this inner pulley, whatever you want to call it. I also sandblasted up some other parts here. That's the elbow that comes out of the side of the block. Those are the bolts for those linkages. This is the spark plug wire tube. So yeah. Okay, let's see if I can do a decent job of explaining maybe a little bit better how this clutch adjustment works now that I have all the pieces cleaned up and almost all the pieces here to show you. So the only thing missing from the assembly now is that driven disc that goes down on the bottom of this assembly. You know, clutch, driven disc, another clutch friction disc, ramp disc, and then this is on top. So pretend that there's another layer in there, but for demonstration here, we don't need that one. So for adjusting the clutch, of course, this plate goes on top here, like so. Nope, like so. Only the holes only line up one way. And then there's bolts that clamp that piece to this piece. So to adjust the play in your clutch, you loosen those bolts up and slide this ring back and forth, which is changing this ring in relation to these ramped parts of that disc. These, if you remember, those got the little ears that are riding on these ramps. So as you move it down and up, that's adjusting how much play there is in everything. This is always staying in relation flat to the outside of the flywheel here because it's bolted to this plate. But just to show you how much, that's how much it's actually, that's how much adjustment you have, so to speak, from nothing at one end of the ramp to that much at that end of the ramp. So everything looking like it should come out pretty close, because that's approximately how thick that driven disc will be. So that'll take up that much play. The new clutch discs will be a slightly thicker than what's the worn ones that are currently in there, not by much though. And then, so it should all come out approximately flush here. And then as that clutch wears over time, so when you initially set it up, it'll be like that. And then when that clutch wears over time, we'll take and adjust this back. We'll actually tighten it up. So the plus on here is actually meaning more slop in everything, more free play. So to tighten it, you actually want to go the opposite way, and then that'll take out the play in everything, if that makes sense. And that's why there's two different holes, because you start with this hole, you go and you get to a certain point and you can't go any farther, and then you'll move your bolt over to this hole and continue adjusting until you basically get to the end of your adjustment. And at that point, you have to replace your friction discs. They're completely, they're worn down beyond adjustment. So that's how that works. So hopefully that kind of shows a little bit better how this adjustment works. And then, of course, this spring goes inside of this whole thing. This will be compressed down to the back side of this when this is all assembled. So that spring is constantly putting pressure on these arms, which is putting pressure on these arms, which is putting pressure on the ramp plate, which is putting pressure on all your friction discs. And then when your throwout is in there, and that's connected into this inner collar, and you disengage your clutch, that's pushing against that spring, taking the pressure off, and you can see how that plate goes down. So that's releasing your clutch. It's releasing all that tension that this spring is otherwise pushing against that way. Kind of a goofy setup. Like I said, it took a while for us to get our brains wrapped around how it was all working, but hopefully that kind of makes sense to explain how this is going. I just got off the phone with Matt. He's working on repairing that brass inner two pieces with the oil slinger end on it. That's what your throwout bearing rides on. So he was working on repairing the one, and we've come to the conclusion we're actually going to remake the one half of that because there's so many things wrong with it that it's easier just to start from scratch at this point, because the internal threads are pretty bad. The end where this keyway rides on this is worn. The internal part of it where it rides on the output shaft of the transmission is worn. There's a lot of things that are kind of not right. So he's just going to look at making a new one for me to match. And then we can make the threads match the good part, the oil slinger half. Cut the threads to fit that part accordingly. So that's where we are on that part of the project. So like I said, Norm is working on casting the driven disc for me. I talked with him last night, and he's just about got it ready to bring to the foundry. So that hopefully a few more weeks, and that part will be at least back from the foundry. Then we'll have to do a little machining on that. So it's coming, slowly but surely. Making progress here. That might be it for this week, so I might just sign off now at this point. And catch you guys next week. I thank you all for watching. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, please consider doing that. It helps me grow the channel. And hit the old like button if you like what you see. Thanks for watching. See you guys next week.